I just watched press screeners for the new Netflix series Beef, and it's bonkers. Hi, I'm LadyJenevia, your anti-propaganda film and television analyst, and although I recorded a reaction to the new Blue Beetle trailer, which was a cute trailer, I enjoyed it, I look forward to seeing that film, I'm not going to be editing that. Trailer reactions can only go so far when you have less than 5% of the finished material to talk about anyway, and instead, I would rather talk about Netflix's Beef, because I've had press screeners for this for a while now, but I caught a cold, I got very busy, and I did not have time to watch those screeners until now, after which it has now become one of my favorite shows that I've watched this year. Is it premature for me to say that when we are only in April? Perhaps. Am I still going to insist that Netflix and the masses in general start campaigning for both Yeun and Wong and the writers of Beef to get nominations at those pretentious award shows? Absolutely.
You can't even run a parking meter. How the fuck is he gonna run Gucci?
I'm not going to get into too many spoilers because I am actually filming this video before the show is released, but it does take me a bit to edit things, so perhaps by the time this video goes live and you, the audience, is watching my review, the show will already be out. So if it is out and you haven't watched it, please go do so. The basic premise of Beef is that we have Danny, played by Yeun, and Amy, played by Wong, and they get into a road rage incident, which when you watch it, you already think, this is a lot. You two are doing far too much. But what's wild is, that's only the show's opening. It's going to escalate to levels you will never anticipate. First, I want to go through and introduce some of the show's characters. We have Danny. He is Korean. His parents are Korean immigrants who have moved back to Korea because of financial woes. But Danny really wants to acquire land and build a dream home for his parents so that they can come back to America and he can be the good firstborn son that has fulfilled his duty to take care of his parents as they get older. Danny also has a younger brother, Paul, who is the epitome of the word himbo. When we first meet Paul, he's getting into crypto. Enough said. Amy has a successful plant business. I don't really know how to explain this business. The whole thing, watching it, it's very LA and it's off-putting. But I digress. The business is very successful, but she wants to sell it off to a wealthy investor so that she can have the time off to be a more present mother to her daughter, June. Amy's husband, George, is handsome, but I don't like him. I can't give too many specifics because of the embargo terms, but if you've already seen the show and you are watching this, you can probably know what he did at any number of moments throughout the season and why my conclusion remains what it is, which is that I don't like him. Ugh. George is the son of a famous Japanese artist, and he's very much living in his father's shadow. He makes these hideous sculptures, and his mother, Fumi, lies to him and says that his art is good, when it's not. There are a couple of other secondary characters that round out the show's ensemble. There's Isaac, who is the cousin of Danny and Paul. He has a habit of getting into criminal activities. There's also Edwin, who goes to the church that Danny starts attending. Edwin is played by Justin Min, whom Netflix viewers may recognize from his leading role in The Umbrella Academy, and Edwin is married to Danny's ex-girlfriend. On Amy's side of the story, there's Jordan, the wealthy white woman Amy is trying to appease and keep in good spirits so that she will be the one to buy Amy's company from her. Also Naomi, who is Jordan's sister-in-law and Amy's friend. I don't like Naomi either, but Ashley Park plays her very well. One thing I just found out from putting this review together, by the way, is that Ashley and Justin are second cousins. I will share more thoughts about some of these characters once we get into my next section, but if I were to summarize one overarching point of feedback, it's that all of these characters are messy, dysfunctional, self-destructive, and that's what makes them and the show in general so much fun to watch. It's just a disaster and no one ever manages to have enough sense to get it together. I don't know if that description on its own is a good way to sell you the show if you have not already watched it, but trust me when I say that as long as you are an adult, you should watch this show. One of the things that stands out the most to me about this show, just in general, but also since it is one of the few bigger Hollywood projects I'm seeing with a predominantly Asian cast, it's that there is such a clear voice and point of view in the storytelling. The two main characters are both Asian and grew up in America and were born in the 1980s. This doesn't feel like a story that was made to try to check a box or to simply pander and acquire Asian viewers without having the substance to back it up. I watch this show and I can clearly hear the voices of Asian elder millennials, unloading all of their generational trauma, their dysfunctions, and doing it fabulously. I love that even though this show is being released in 2023 and it's more or less supposed to be set in present day, with the exception of a couple of flashback scenes that really enhance that flavor of childhood trauma, I can feel the nostalgia in this show. I'll give you an example of what I mean by that. At the end of episode 1, someone does something absolutely vile. It's disgusting, dysfunctional, rotted behavior, but very entertaining nonetheless. And the way that the show punctuates this is by turning on the soundtrack, more specifically, The Reason by Hoobastank. Oh, when I tell you I screamed, and then I was just transported back in time to seeing that music video played on TV back when those channels would actually play music videos, which is the entire point of those channels. And then I had the thought of, wasn't the lead singer of Hoobastank Asian? I could have sworn I remember him looking Asian, so I looked it up. His mom's Japanese. I see what you're doing, Beef music coordinators, and I love it. They end a different episode with the song Somewhere Only We Know by Keen. What year is it? The nostalgia of it all. If any of you don't know that song, you can look it up, or if you've seen He's Just Not That Into You, that is the song that plays when Justin Long goes to Ginnifer Goodwin's apartment to tell her that he's into her. I don't like that rom-com, and I will not be bullied into acting like I do. I don't like it, and I will not apologize for that. It just makes me feel validated, though, in my creative brainstorming for soundtrack choices. Pick an older song and transport your audience back in time to the feelings evoked by those songs. Pull up I'm Good by Black and put it in your movie soundtrack. That's not in Beef, but that's the song that I personally would want to be surprised to hear in a new movie. Or perhaps Are You Feeling Me by Alia. There's just so many great choices.
So now if you'll excuse me, they're playing my jam.
The term coming of age is often used as a descriptor for media with protagonists that are either kids or young adults. Typically, you would see main characters who are either in their late teens or early 20s, but the overabundance of stories focusing on that age range with that descriptor seems to convey an idea that once you age out of that category, you more or less have it together. You've figured everything out. And what Beef does that I find so delicious is that it completely rejects that premise. This is where we really get to the meat of the show. It's just so hard for me to avoid the meat puns. The show's material is just so meaty. Look at the beefcake himbo. Paul, Steven Yeun, and Ali Wong really sank their teeth into the material for their performances. This show strikes a fascinating balance of this almost nihilistic, deconstructive approach to its main characters, but also being deeply loving and empathetic to both of them. It's funny because I think if you had described this show on premise alone, I don't think I would have assumed that it would be something that I would like to watch, but I really ended up enjoying it. Even though it can be so frustrating to watch both Danny and Amy constantly make things worse and fail at every opportunity to make better decisions, I'm still invested in them, and I can't look away. Admittedly, there is a nostalgic appeal of watching characters be this terrible because it scratches this itch of those early 2000s reality TV shows when people would be completely unhinged to a level that they would just never be today because they're worried about being bullied off of social media, or they'll lean into it but with a self-awareness because they want to gain followers from that. Gen Z is ruining the fun when they could be mobilizing to terrorize corporate executives who don't pay workers fair wages. That's choice. That's all I'm saying. Think of the bigger picture. The way that the circumstances escalate for both Danny and Amy's goals is unlike any other new Hollywood thing that I've watched recently. If I were to try to compare this to anything that I've already seen, it would probably have to be something French. Now, if you're French and you're watching this, please don't be offended. Jean-Pierre Jeunet's best film is on my wall. If I was going to compare Beef to anything else that I've already watched, it would have to be Jeux d'enfant. If you've not seen that film, I mean, prepare to be made sad and upset if you do watch it. Only the French would release that movie and categorize it as a romance while I watch it, and it just makes me want to throw my shoes at both Julienne and Sophie. Cap ou pas cap? More like both of you need a cap in your derriere, so you stop acting like that. Mutually assured destruction. and yet somehow that's romance. Okay. But make no mistake, Beef is not a romance. It's this deep introspective exploration of the humanity of two deeply wounded people. I was talking with someone privately about this show, and we were making points about how boring both of us found the To All the Boys films to be, and I also personally find that the superficial representation matters slogan or rhetoric is not good enough of a threshold to reach on its own. Now, admittedly, Laura Jean is a sufficient protagonist for Asian children to watch and look up to out of the barren wasteland of Hollywood media when it comes to Asian protagonists, of which there are so few. For Asian adult viewers, however, who want to dig into the trenches and the darkest corners of main characters, Beef is the vastly superior option. Danny and Amy both do some truly awful things to each other, to themselves, and to their loved ones, but what ultimately makes Beef so successful is that it has the capacity to make its audience feel not just seen on a superficial level, but to show empathy to the ugliest, most flawed parts of your personal character. All storytelling is an exercise in empathy, but this show just takes it to a whole other level. I need someone to twist the arms of the Netflix executives who decide whether or not to submit their shows and films for awards show consideration, because both Steven and Ali need to be nominated, the writing team needs to be nominated, and I stand by that firmly. There's this one scene where Yeun just starts breaking down and crying, and I was made to feel incredibly uncomfortable because he's doing it in a location that I personally never ever want to be in, but the way he's just digging into the deepest parts of this character, Danny, and laying it out bare for the audience is so good. And there's a different scene where Amy is in therapy and they do this extreme close-up, and Ali Wong has to play so many layers of this character at once, where Amy is being questioned about things that she does not want to address, she does not want to revisit, and all of that is playing out on her face, even though she's not verbally expressing any of it, and I loved watching it. It was fantastic. So in conclusion, watch Beef on Netflix. Another point I probably should have mentioned earlier, but better late than never, is that Netflix did not produce Beef. The show makes a point of putting the A24 logo all over its opening for each and every episode. And to be clear, A24 is also a distributor, so there is this tendency for people to overproject this parasocial love onto the A24 brand, when first and foremost, any art you see from any production company, producer, what have you, that love and gratitude should be put onto the artists and workers who brought it to life. But I think that overall there is this daring sensibility and spirit to Beef that I don't know if I really see in as many Netflix originals that have been made and released in recent years, with a few exceptions, of course. Maybe Netflix should focus more on being a distributor and less of a producer, if they're not willing to go big and bold and to trust the artists that they hire to make things, because Beef is by far one of the best new shows I've seen them release in a while. Now, don't get me wrong, I really enjoy things like Bridgerton and Shadow and Bone, and I want more people to watch both of those shows so that we can continue to see stories from those universes, but those shows were already up and running before 2023, which is why I don't categorize them as new. As far as I'm aware, they might have been greenlit by totally different management than whomever is in charge of things right now. I don't know who's making these decisions at that company. So to reiterate yet again, everyone go watch Beef unless you are my mother. Don't watch it. It's not your thing. My mom doesn't like salacious content. And there's this one scene where Ali Wong is getting down with the get down.
Is that how old people say sex?
Thank you everyone for watching. Browse my other videos and like, comment, and subscribe to support my channel. We've got more Netflix reviews coming. I have a screener for that new Rachel Lee Cook rom-com that's coming out later this month, A Tourist's Guide to Love. I have not watched it yet, so I don't have an opinion formed. So if you work for Netflix and you are hearing me bring this up, don't get mad at me. I'm not leaking anything. That's impossible for me to do if I haven't watched it yet. And of course, as I've said many times, Queen Charlotte is coming out in just a month from now. So you know that I'm going to have words to say about that. See you in the next video. Bye.